This is the Not So Korean podcast. I am Jason Verney. As you probably know, we started this podcast back in 2021 and used to record this live in UK's Koreatown itself. That's an area in and around New Malden. Yes, that's the largest Koreatown and Korean community in Europe. These days, we bring you such episodes and therefore information and interviews from various places in the world, including Korea itself. This is the Not So Korean podcast. I am Jason Verney. In this episode, you might be wondering what we're going to talk about, but hopefully the thumbnail or the image will give you some indication, but there's a lot of ground to cover here. I did speak a little bit about this in episode 43, but I got that out. I put that episode out because I was so sort of overwhelmed by support or sort of offerings and kindness, which kind of spurred me on to make this trip to South Korea. And this particular episode, I'm going to speak more about that, my plans in Korea, also the Koreanness in Vietnam, which I'm kind of got my last couple of days of as I record this, and also the Korean connection with Thailand, or at least what I've experienced over the last few months. But as I say, there's a lot to cover, including why I'm going to Korea and how long for, which place I'm arriving in. I can't arrive in more than one place. And loads more really. So I'm going to try and get through all this as quickly as possible. I was going to record this while I was still in Thailand, but as I alluded to and mentioned in episode 43, there was literally so much to cover, and then other things kept happening, like I got involved with some filming which is to do with a Korean related topic, some other things, and now I find myself, as you're listening to this, in fact you're going to be listening to this once I've arrived in Korea, because I'm in Vietnam. I've been in Vietnam for a week, but I'm going to cover that, well, almost a week. I'm going to cover that in this episode, but by the time it's uploaded, I'm going to be, I'm pretty sure I will have landed in Korea. In that particular episode, you might have heard, you might not have heard, but as I say, I covered quite a bit of stuff, but not as much as I'm going to cover in this episode. I am sort of warning you. So there's sort of bits of news I'm going to be talking about, which is either exciting, let's say prominent, or even not so exciting and maybe less happy reasons for being in Korea. So that short episode, which was episode 43, which we kind of label now as the Not So Long Korean podcast, as opposed to the general series names, which is this one, it's a Not So Korean podcast. That's what this series has always been. But every now and again I throw in a snippet of a shorter episode about a certain subject matter that I don't feel is worthy, but it is still one of the episodes. Let's elaborate on what was said, but also tell you some new information. So I announced two special guests. One of those was Annie Ko, who followed in episode 42, I believe, and she's from the Korean indie band, electro pop band, Love Exterior, but we talked about Dog Meat Man, Eating Dog, dogs as pets, rescue dogs, and a little bit of music as well. It was kind of promised in that episode that the second interview with Anna Bondarenko, that would be with you in March. I think I might have promised that, but it's April, and as I'm recording this right now, we're coming up to the middle of April, so it's clearly not happened yet. So all being well, this is episode 44 that you're listening to now, and then episode 45, all being well, will be Anna's interview. Basically what's happened is I find myself in Nha Trang in Vietnam, which is a place I came to before last year in September time, and it was before I went over to Korea last time, but completely different reasons for that, completely different. I was even in Ho Chi Minh that time, so it wasn't just Nha Trang, but this time I'm in Nha Trang. As I said before, it's a heavily Korean area as well as Russian area. That will come into play as to why I'm going from Vietnam rather than straight from Thailand. Yeah, we're now in April's midpoint, and yeah, this April is full of, as I said, big news, or at least big things that are happening to me on this trip to Korea. And yeah, well, the first thing is I'm returning to Korea. That's the first bit of news. And I started to script this little episode, or at least put some points down, in Thailand. So now, as I say, I'm in Vietnam, but I will be in Korea by the time you listen to this, or maybe I would have been back in Thailand or somewhere else by the time you actually hear it. But you get my drift. I'm going to be in 3 countries. But the strangest thing about this, when I started to sort of put some points down and script this episode, I had only really been away from Korea 3 months. I left mid-December. And so when I started, mid-March, I was thinking, this is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go over to Korea. So, and everything was coming up, and loads of things I had to do in Thailand as well, and putting some stuff in storage, and little things that you just do, life things. I'm writing a script. I'm writing several scripts, film-related things. Another podcast I run, that's the Micro-Budget Filmmakers podcast, which I'm going to touch on in a minute as well, or in a few minutes, because there's also someone who I tend to meet in these countries who's related to Korea and that podcast episode, one of those episodes. Yeah, so it was only 3 months, and now it's let's just say about 4 months, and I can honestly say that I've never been back to Korea in such a short time before. There was one time when I was in Asia, and I was in Thailand, I think. It was 2017, and I had to go back home because of passport issues, but I was commissioned to film something in Korea that summer, which was my first taste of a Korean summer. But I had to go back to the UK, and I then travelled out and met some people on Jeju, and we did some filming. Yeah, so that was different. That's going from Asia back to the UK, back to Asia again. But this time, I think 2013, I had visited Korea in the spring and then visited in the autumn. So that's probably the soonest, or the most, the least time between Korean visits. But as I say, this time, yes, I left in winter and I'm returning in spring. And winter was my first experience of in Korea, and it was only the beginning of winter, and I'm now returning in spring. But spring I have experienced, but it was a few years ago. I can't remember if 2013 was the last time, but it was definitely one of the last times. This is also a very poignant trip and a very sad trip in some ways, because it's not only my 10th trip to Korea, but it's also the 10th anniversary of Seoul ferry, the tragedy from 2014, when more than 300 people were lost to the sea. 250 of those or so were children. They were told to stay put, but I'm not going to go into that too much in this episode. But that was kind of the spark that made me want to be here. I thought, if I'm going to be in Asia, so close to Korea, I'm not going to let this pass. But as time went on, I didn't want to drag myself away from where I was comfortable elsewhere in Asia back to Korea. And yeah, so that was kind of the sort of planting the seed, and that's why I was, as time's gone on, I thought, no, I am going back. But there was also some things that happened and people that I met that sort of spurred me on to revisit Korea. So that's quite a significant reason, it being the 10th trip to Korea. Also, it's significant in other ways, because back in August I was in Vietnam, and I hopped over to Seoul from here in Vietnam, and that sort of began that long visit in Korea. Well, as I say, I've already left Bangkok, but my main reason for being in Bangkok this time around was the Thai premiere of my movie, Reparation. That's really why, being in the sort of bustling city of Bangkok, I wanted to have this week in, the Nha Trang area. The other significant thing that's happening is I'm arriving in Cheongju, and I've never been to Cheongju. That is a half truth, and I'll tell you why I'm arriving in Cheongju. It basically, how can I put this? Basically, where I am in Nha Trang, as I'm recording this right now, I might be in Korea by the time you hear it. It's, as I say, it's got a lot of Koreans, but so has elsewhere in Vietnam. But there is there are flights that go direct to Korea, but they tend to go to Cheongju. I don't know if that's because there's, it's near to Sejong City, Sejong-si, and it's very, there's lots of, what can I say? How can I say? There's lots of businesses, offices, and that kind of thing. So maybe people take breaks from their life there. That's probably me just assuming, I don't know. I will say, although I haven't been to Cheongju before, I've always arrived in Seoul. I have stayed in Osong, Sejong City, which I just mentioned, and Jeju, because those three places were all connected to a film festival where my film, Reparation, which is, by the way, the reason I mention this film is because also it's a Korean language and English language film, that was in that area. So technically, you could almost class it that I was in the Cheongju area. It's close to Daejeon as well, but I haven't ever arrived in the airport there, and I'm staying there 2 or 3 nights before going up to Seoul. So, and one other thing I'm going to mention, I did just briefly touch on it, that my film was in the Thai premiere in Bangkok, but there is a reason for me mentioning that, because there's a Korean connection as well. So for perhaps avid listeners of this show will also recall that, as I say, Nha Trang is very popular with Koreans, and not only that, this particular part of the trip does feel a bit sort of deja vu-ish, because I'm not only going straight over to Korea as well afterwards, which is what I did last time, but it's also got this Korean connection here. If you check out one of the past episodes, I do talk about the Korean presence in Vietnam, so it's worth, if you want to, check out that episode. And just on that subject, in all my sort of Asia and elsewhere travels over the last 15 years or so, finding Koreans or Koreanness and the Korean diaspora, be it Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, or even in Europe and Netherlands, UK, it's one of those things I'm always doing without knowingly doing it, but it's kind of a massive research this whole last decade or more regarding Korea. Obviously, I'm interested in other Asian cultures, but Korea is a big part of my life. Yes, I just mentioned Thailand, as I keep going back to, but when I was in Chiang Mai, it's lots of Koreans visit it for a holiday, sometimes maybe for a weekend, sometimes for a longer time, and I've befriended one or two on this most recent visits, and one of them resulted in sort of long sort of hours on end chat, so apologies to those people I met. And I did, funnily enough, bump into a Korean artist friend who I know from the UK. And it was such a strange situation. I was at an art exhibition, a really good exhibition, in a venue that I've been to before in Chiang Mai. And this woman came up to me, and I recognised her straight away. And she said to me, "What are you doing? What are you doing here?" And I kind of almost said exactly the same to her. "What are you doing here?" Back to her. Her name is Eunmi Mimi Kim. And she happened to be in Chiang Mai because of a group exhibition, and I love her work. I've seen her work in London before on more than one occasion, and I ultimately ended up going to see her work in Chiang Mai. And it wasn't her first time in Chiang Mai, but it was one of these times that she's this time there for her art. I'm not sure if other times she's been there solely for her art, but she's definitely been there before. And it was someone else, and her and someone else maybe, who reminded me as well that there's a kind of phrase for Koreans that go to Chiang Mai and elsewhere, and I think it's Handal. I thought it was Hanguk Handal or Handal Hanguk, which is kind of sort of 1 month Korean, but I think it might be more accurately Handal, I'm reading this, Handal Salgi, which is kind of living for a month. And I didn't realise there was even a term, but it seems to be a term that's been coined in Koreans' lives for going over to Chiang Mai or maybe to Nha Trang, but Chiang Mai, this was come up in conversations about Chiang Mai and Thailand. So I learned something then that, yeah, sure, it's just the combination of using 1 month and the Korean for, you know, one and the other terminology. But it was just another little thing that I'm learning. As I say, I'm constantly learning about Korean life and diaspora and ways of life, and maybe other countries also have that. You know, it's not like this isn't sort of pinpointing Koreans and stereotyping what they do. It's just something that I personally have learned. So one person I also spoke to, and I mentioned just now that I spoke to people for hours on end, and one of these was a woman who we ended up going to a coffee shop and elsewhere and a walk, and you know, a few hours later, it was over. But the friendship, we've chatted a lot on Kakao Talk, and the friendship has really just begun. But it was also this particular meeting of minds and sharing passions about career and life. It's one of the reasons I thought, right, I'm definitely going back over there, even though Sewol, you know, the ferry, because I have to, when I do these travels, I have to put a lot of effort into actually arranging the travel, as well as, you know, do I keep accommodation on in the other country I'm in, or do I go over there? But thanks to this, you know, meeting, I'm going to be also returning to Jeju, and that was somewhere I wasn't going to go. Bearing in mind I was only there the end of November, beginning of December. I can't remember exactly when now, and I didn't necessarily need to go back there. And this trip, I don't want it to be as long as the last trip. I know that I can get a 90-day visa and stay in Korea up to that, but you know, I'm making films. I'm trying to produce a film in Thailand at the moment, and another film which is Korean related as well. But you know, I need to put myself somewhere rather than keep traveling. But I am, regarding Jeju, I really am looking forward to going back to an area I've been to briefly before, which is the Hamdok area of Jeju, and of course meeting that particular friend. And yeah, they've offered to help in some way, and that's really good for me. And it just shows the warmth of some, you know, of Koreans and the hospitality. And you know, as I touched on episode 43, you know, I don't know if it's kindness or Korean jong, because we did also discuss jong when I spoke to this woman. So yes, so those two Chiang Mai related and other random meetings with Koreans also, as I say, taught me this other phrase of Koreans that stay in, you know, in 1 month somewhere. But I'm also going to come back to the Thailand and Korean connection in a few moments, because there's a few more things to chat about, not necessarily relating to this trip, but relating to what I've learnt and what I've witnessed and what I've seen. As I mentioned, this is the plan. I'm landing in Cheongju, and I will land there. I will arrive there on the 11th of April, so you might be hearing this after the 11th. And I'm going from this area because, as I said, this area has flights into Cheongju. So I could have gone direct from Bangkok to Seoul, but I really wanted some time before I go straight to Korea rather than Bangkok to Seoul. And you know, as I say, I'm in a relatively chilled beach town, but it's got a lot of, you know, it's got a lot of Koreanness here. There's a place on the beach called K House, and it's clearly Koreans, and I mean not just Koreans go there, but it's very, you know, it's a big old place on the beach side, and you know, other things. And also you've got people here, and I don't know if I covered this in an earlier episode talking about the Korean in Vietnam, but you've also got, I think it's Korean people here, but then they speak, and maybe they're speaking Russian, or maybe they're from Kazakhstan, maybe they're Korean Russian, maybe they're Kazakhstan Korean, or other stans, you know. I don't know enough. I've spoken to one or two people, but it's not the sort of thing. I don't get chatting to everyone I meet, everyone I overhear. So yeah, when I do finally leave here, that's the plan. I land in Cheongju, and you know, it's going to be going from this semi-calm Nha Trang to the landing in the morning calm of Korea. Literally, I'm going to be arriving in the morning, because I leave, I think my flight is after 1 a.m. early in the morning, and so yeah, I'll be arriving in the land of calm, and it will be in the morning. Now, after Cheongju, not to be confused with Jeongju. Jeongju does come up in a minute though, but Cheongju, I'm going to head up to Seoul, perhaps for a week, perhaps for more. And I'm going to visit, of course, relating to Sewol, the ferry. I'm going to visit at some point the Ansan, the school in Ansan, but the memorial part of that place. Danwon High School in Ansan. I've been to the classrooms before, which are kind of, I wouldn't say replicas, because they are the exact same classes, but they've been moved in their full sort of the way they were into this memorial building. And, you've got more than one level of classrooms laid out how they would be. And also I'm going to go to Gwanghwamun Square, the main square in Seoul, where there will be some memorial. There's other events taking place leading up to the 16th of April, that being the date of the tragedy, but this being a 10-year anniversary. And just while I'm just gathering my notes together, for those who do or don't know, I've been involved with these memorials in London for almost 10 years since it happened, and every month we've done something, and it's been a big part of my life, really. So I couldn't not be here in Korea, seeing as I'm so close to Korea. If I was in the UK, I might not make this journey over. It would depend on other factors. So after meeting friends in Seoul, I've got a few people I'm going to meet, all being well. I'm going to head down to Jeonju. So it's going from Cheongju to Jeongju, and Jeonju International Film Festival. Now, I've been to Jeonju a couple of times, kind of briefly, but this time, including the film festival, and this time I pretty much, I think, secured a pass for the festival. So I'm going to spend, I don't know if it'll be the full 10 days of the festival. It'll be at least 7 days, I'm sure. And then, as I say, I'm going to go from Jeonju to Jeju, because that's where I'm going to spend about a week, maybe more, maybe less, on Jeju. And then if it ties in time for the 18th of May, because by then it would be a month later, I might even head to Gwangju to be there for the 5/18, the 18th of May, Gwangju, the massacre uprising memorial. Now that's several years ago. I've been to Gwangju before, twice. I love Gwangju, but as I say, if I got a chance to be there on that date, it will just have some more meaning and significance if I can do that. This is what I try to do, you see, with these trips, especially, and the difference being this time is that I'm not necessarily basing myself somewhere for a month or two because of these Jeju and Jeonju and maybe Gwangju. I'm actually not going to be committing myself for that long in each place. Although it could be, I'm hoping to go to Busan as well. It could be that when I get to Busan, I think, right, let's settle here for a while. But of course, I've got to plan this in advance. It's not that easy. But at the same time, this feels like a more spontaneous trip. So in a way, it's easier in the mind. It's easier in the kind of what I have to prepare. But of course, I'm still worried about the next stage and blah, blah, blah. I've got my accommodation booked in Cheongju, so that's good. Now, talking to Busan, I did touch on this briefly. Oh, no, I know what it is. I've just put a couple of articles on my mini-movie.com website. So it's mini-movie.com, which is mostly film-related stuff. I've put 2 articles up about Jeonju. There might be another article to come. One of them talks about the 6 Sewol ferry-related films that are going to feature at that festival. And I do talk about an event that I missed in Busan, which is there was a march or procession, a march going from different places, from Mokpo, where the ferry is, that I've been to twice. I'm actually making a documentary or a documontage about that. And I'll cover that in a second as well. I've missed that event that was leading up to the 10-year anniversary. It went through various cities, and Busan was one of those, Seoul, Mokpo, etc. Now, what I'm going to say, we're going to break this down a slightly bit. We're going to break the rest of this episode down a bit more into sort of categorization to finish this episode off. But as I say, you're probably going to be hearing this in Korea. So if I refer to being in Vietnam, that's because right now I am. One thing I did while I was in Nha Trang is I went to see the film Exhumer. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because I say I've got a few things here to mention about Nha Trang, the Koreanness in this area, and a few things relating to that. But yeah, I saw it in a cinema, a Lotte cinema, because there's a lot of Korean here. There's a big Korean, as I say, big Korean community, lots of Korean investment. I suppose that's what a lot of this is in a result of. And it had Vietnamese and English subtitles. I did wonder last time I came to Vietnam, because it had been a decade or so before when I came here in August, September last year. It had been a good decade or so, I think, since I last visited, so I didn't know. And that would have been a very sort of whistle-stop kind of visit. I didn't spend a great deal of time there. Not learning either. I was on holiday mode, just moving from city to city in Vietnam. But this one, they do have English subtitles almost as much as they do in the Thailand cinemas. So Vietnam's changing a lot, I think. So a good film. Not really. It doesn't really break the mold too much in some ways. It doesn't break in too much ground. But I did think it's quite funny because it does break graves, because it's all about burial sites and graves and the ground. So it's kind of. I can see why everyone's liking that film. Another thing to mention about Nha Trang, Vietnam. There's a guy I know, as I might have just mentioned earlier on, actually, Nigel Savio-Desar, who I met in Busan about a decade ago at the film festival. We've kept in touch, and we've also bumped into one another. We meet up here in Vietnam, Nha Trang. He happens to be in the same area. And also we've accidentally bumped into each other in Bangkok. And as I say, Korea, I've met him a couple of times, years and years ago, but we've kept in touch. But the reason I mention this as well, if you're really interested in hearing a bit about what he's been involved with, especially relating to Korea, if you search for the Micro Budget Filmmakers podcast, you can find it's got its own channel on YouTube. But also it's available, Spotify, all the usual places, and it's on Instagram as Micro Budget Filmmakers, and it's you'll hear him talk about being a filmmaker, a producer, a screenwriter, an experienced journalist. That was in Korea as well, professor and an actor. So he's done a lot of work in South Korea, also Thailand. He's a really interesting guy, Nigel Savio-Desar. So that's all the kind of Nha Trang, Vietnam, Korean related stuff out the way. And one thing I'm just going to mention is, before I get on to Thailand and Korean related things that have been happening, I feel really kind of crazy, silly, stupid, whatever, because there's actually happening right now as I record this, and it's from the 6th to the 13th of April, there is the Ho Chi Minh International Film Festival. It's the inaugural year. It's the first ever year. It didn't properly sink in until a day or two ago. I'd seen posts from friends of mine, acquaintances in the industry and filmmakers, even people that I've seen quite recently, and I thought, so that's happening. And why did I choose Nha Trang and not Saigon? Although if I'd gone to Saigon, Ho Chi Minh, whatever you want to call it, I wouldn't have got this calm, sort of relaxing time that I'm trying to have here in Nha Trang. I would have been focused on seeing film after film after film. And there's a Korean connection coming up here. Just that you might be thinking, what's he blabbering on about? What's he going on about? But basically, I even contemplated last night and a couple of nights, or yesterday, whenever it was, and I was thinking, can I change the flight? Can I go there, then go to Korea? And I couldn't basically do it without spending a lot more money. And I just kicking myself a bit, because I could have come to Nha Trang, made the most of this, and also spent a few nights in Saigon. But the even more crazy thing is that somewhere on Film Freeway, which is where filmmakers submit films to, I'd actually saved it as a festival worth checking out, or either worth submitting my film to, one of my future films to. And so it's just crept up on us, and it's just one of those things, it have to be next year. But what I did notice in their schedule, bear in mind they're the first year, they're showing a hell of a lot of films, loads and loads of films, Vietnamese films, of course, English, Asian films. They're even showing, I'm not sure if it's past or not as I record this, but they're showing A Tale of Two Sisters, that's Kim Ji-woon, Broker, that's by Coriader, as I'm sure you know. Sorry, and also The Good, the Bad, the Weird, which is Kim Ji-woon. Sorry, I might be getting the names mixed up with the wrong directors there. Anyway, it's Broker, The Good, the Bad, the Weird, A Tale of Two Sisters and maybe other ones. And that festival is backed by a hell of a lot of companies, including Korean companies, cinema, CGV and all this. I've been looking at their website. So I'm kind of kicking myself, or at least thinking, why didn't I go there? But I know for next year, I'm not going to, I'm going to try and attend either as an audience member or as one of my films to the Ho Chi Minh City International Film Festival. As I say, I have to wait for now. So this will probably be the end, or leading towards the end now. I just want to mention, roughly what I'm doing in Korea now. But also I want to talk about a few things that I've, learnt or seen or been made aware of Thailand, and why the Thailand-Korea connection is there. I mean, it's very there these days. And what I mean is there's a lot of people, Thais looking to Korean dramas, looking up to their culture. For better or for worse, depends what it is. I've got friends who are Thai that go to Korea. There's a thing, and putting the surgery to one side, that's another thing that, I don't want to get into that subject now, but there's a lot of influence, and it's interesting to me because for one thing I want to just chat about is Thailand got me into Korean culture and films. About 16 years ago, I came to Thailand, and I'm sorry if I've mentioned this a little bit of length before. Got me into culture, got me to Asian films. When I went back to the UK, I just kind of not long lived in London, so I was already seeking out these other cinemas that played, different films to the average Hollywood stuff. And Asian cinema, as well as Asia, got its claws into me not long after moving to London. So you can imagine, I was lapping up everything Asian film related and independent film related, foreign film related, but within a year or whatever, I'd already honed in on. I'd got involved with Japanese cinema, as in I got involved with the screenings. There was Third Window, Terracotta Distribution in the UK that I really respected for releasing great films, Japanese and Korean films. And I have a lot to thank Thailand for. If only the fact that it was a holiday I came to Thailand for with a friend. And then from that, it's got down this movie culture route into Korea. I mean, I could dedicate a whole episode to that. But I've spent the last 4 months, when I left Korea, I've been in Thailand, apart from this week when I'm in Vietnam. Mostly I've been in Thailand. And these are things that happened to me that I can think of and I've been making notes about that revolve around Korea are as follows. The first thing is, if you don't know already, Bangkok has a Koreatown. It's either known as Korea Plaza, Sukhumvit Plaza, Koreatown. It's essentially restaurants, maybe hairdressers, but it's got bingsu, dessert places. And the reason I was there was because I was actually taking a visit somewhere. Where was I going? It was to do with a visa trip, and I got picked up there early hours of the morning. So I saw it in a different light. I don't normally see it at sort of 3 a.m, 4 a.m, whatever it was. And I sort of documented it a bit. And so that's something else. It's not my first time seeing the area, but it's nothing like. We always think that Koreatown in the UK, where I lived for 3 years, New Malden, is not like your typical Koreatown. It's not like a Chinatown. It's just a place where Koreans, up to 20,000 Koreans might reside, North and South Koreans. Whereas this is even smaller and it's labelled as Koreatown. But it's Koreatown because it's got restaurants and a community. Maybe there's a little community there. But and the other thing to talk about here is almost opposite K-Town, let's call it K-Town Plaza, is the KCC, the Korean Cultural Centre, Thailand. Now, I've been there before. I've even posted it on one of the Instagram and Facebook channels or accounts that I've got, but one day I went there with a filmmaker from he's actually not from Thailand, he's actually Chinese, but his name's Patrick. He's a newfound creative and filmmaking friend from who I've met in Thailand, and we went there because he was helping me film some scenes for my currently in production Sewol related film, Sewol ferry related film, which is kind of a documentary, kind of a documontage. It's called District Sewol, and that will make sense as time goes by. I was even thinking of completing it for this 10-year anniversary, but there's other stuff I wanted to put into it. If you want to seek it out, District Sewol, you can actually find on Instagram already, so I'd be interested if you want a message or whatever to know more. I'm happy to respond. That was another thing that happened in Bangkok. Now, it's ironic as well, because if people know my sort of background as well, they'll know that I used to film events in the Korean Cultural Centre, London, or KCC, UK, and I attended many events there 15 years ago, whatever, when I was getting into Korean film and Korean culture. So it's funny that I've now ended up doing something in the Korean Cultural Centre, Bangkok, or Thailand rather. Yeah, and I had to do this filming. Well, I was being filmed as well as doing the film. We were doing filming. I wanted it to be filmed before I left Bangkok this time around, rather than leave it till I get back there another time. But there was an exhibition on called Waiting for Spring, and I thought, how apt, because this Sewol ferry, I'm going to Korea in spring. It was running from the 7th of December to 2023 to the 29th of March. So literally a couple of days before I was a few days before I was really leaving. But we managed to get there, I think on the 27th. We got permission from them. I had contacted them before. Yeah, I got it done just before I was to hop, or pop, not K-pop, away from Thailand. And yeah, as I say, it's an exhibition, but it's an exhibition that highlights this kind of artwork, drawing. You might know this. It's let me pronounce it properly, Sumukwa. Now, there's Minhwa. If you've heard of Minhwa, I don't know, there's different drawings in Korean history, but Sumukwa is the Korean pronunciation of the Chinese word for ink wash painting. But as I say, it's got heavy Korean elements, or at least, there's a lot of Chinese Korean mixed stuff in Korean culture. And it was by the who is it, Yi Wang and Yi Seo Art Club. I think the woman involved is Ottilia Huang. I didn't manage to speak to her or anything, but I think it's like there's a art club or a foundation or something. Yeah, some lovely pictures, lovely drawings on the 2 floors of the Korean Cultural Centre in Bangkok, in Thailand. We achieved a lot of the footage that I wanted, if not more. And you'll be seeing some of that eventually if you want to know more or whatever. That is that's something I'm excited about, as much as I can be excited about something that's so, such a sad piece of history, the Korean ferry, the Sewol. I will put a bit of a lighter mood here. Bingsu. Now, I mentioned Bingsu places being in the Koreatown and the Plaza area. But I have noticed the more and more I've travelled different parts of Asia. I mean, I don't go to that many new parts of Asia, but every now and again I add on another country. But I've noticed, especially in Thailand, you've got shaved ice desserts or ice cream desserts that look very bingsu-ish. Puddings, desserts, ice cream, sweets, whatever you want to call them. And the more I see these things and see these places, I do wonder where. I know bingsu is really very Korean, but there's obviously some parallels with other nations in Asia and very similar sweets. So, I actually went with Justina Jang from the KBCE. We met in Seoul last year. I think it was last year, or maybe it was the year before. We've met in Seoul a few times, and she lives in England. And we actually had some red bean bingsu, and I think it was one of those proper. It was a cafe restaurant, well known, but it does kind of the original type of bingsu. I believe. I think that's what I would describe it as. So I've been talking for a long time, and I'm sure I've missed stuff relating to Korea, related to my trip to Korea and my recent Korean adventures and the adventures that are just about to begin. So I'm springing back to Korea, and from Cheongju to Jeonju, as I mentioned, there's the film festivals. Oh no, there was another thing. I knew there was something in that terrifying Thai film festival where my film Reparation, the 30-minute drama, Korean language, English language, where that played. It played with a load of other films, and there was actually another Korean filmmaker there, and her name was Shin-Hoo Yi, and she had a very interesting, very different to mine, a very interesting film, which essentially was performance art that was filmed, from on a stage or what have you. But it also added some let's say fictionized, let's say location filming as well on top of that. So there's another thing I need to mention as well. It was really good to meet somebody there that I could talk their ear off about my Korean passion and all that. But yeah, we spoke, and I'll try and keep in touch with that person or get in touch with them again or something. One other thing, I've skipped over a couple of points here. That was another thing relating to Thailand. There's another point here. I went to see Past Lives I'm going to say it's the third time. I saw it in Busan Film Festival last year. Then I saw it on a small screen, and I'm probably going to do another episode about Past Lives, things that I saw this time around. But I saw it in Chiang Mai, and I saw it from beginning to end, as opposed to I hadn't actually seen it on the big screen without missing some of it before, and it affected me heavily. So there was another thing, yet another Korean related thing. I'm sure there's been other Korean related things that have happened to me or people I've met in the last 4 months in Thailand, and when I go back to Thailand, maybe these things will come back to me. But I think that's long enough. And the next episode hopefully will be the interview with Anna Bondarenko, and probably gonna maybe even meet her in Busan if I have a chance to pop to Busan. So that's it. I'm just gonna wish you all the best and leave you with the words 안녕히 계세요. Well, we hope you enjoyed that episode. So that's all from us. 안녕히 계세요.